We'll start with the champs from the South, Utah. Kyle Whittingham's been around for a long time, and he gets rewarded with his Pac-12 championship last year. He gets Cameron Rising back at quarterback. He gets his running back returning. He gets both tight ends back. He gets, I believe his leading receiver returns, his number 2 receiver, because Covey, who was there for like 100 years, finally left in the NFL. And they're always going to be good on defense. They unfortunately lose Devin Lloyd. That is a major loss, but there's a lot of talent coming back on defense, including they get Florida transfer linebacker Diabate. So, yeah, Utah is going to be really good again. The question's going to be, with Rising coming back, can they do more? Can they be a playoff team?
Well, that's a good question. There's some people think that they could be the sleeper team to crash the party this year. They won the Pac-12 last year, so can they duplicate that effort here again this year? A big factor that works in their favor is that no team in the FBS started more underclassmen than did Utah last year. Number 1 in the country, 67.5% of their starts were made by underclassmen last year. That means they're all coming back with all that success and all that confidence. There's a lot of people that really love Utah. My biggest concern is they climbed the mountain last year. Can they stay there this year? Because I think there's a couple of other teams in this conference that are going to be improved.
Yeah, schedule-wise, they got a huge opener at Florida. That is a major game. If they want a championship, if they want to get to the playoffs, they have to win that game. They can't lose it. And that's the thing. When you're in the Pac-12, you really have to go undefeated, unless you lose to a powerhouse team like Alabama or Georgia, and then run the table. So schedule-wise, they get host San Diego State, also a non-conference, and in the conference, Oregon on the road. So I just think it's going to be tough unless they get a break and they can somehow find a way to get to the playoffs with just one loss.
Well, the one thing that helps them the most is hosting Southern Cal rather than traveling there. That could be beneficial for them in their favor here as well. So if they can take care of business and win the games they're supposed to, because they'll be favored in just about every game they play this year, perhaps other than the Southern Cal game. That's going to probably be a real pick'em type football game. They could have another monster year.
Speaking of Southern Cal, Lincoln Riley's in town. So you know what? It's going to happen fast. They're going to be back to being like Pete Carroll and USC before long. Could be this year. He brings in Caleb Williams, Travis Dye. He brings in Austin Jones, Jordan Addison, Mario Williams. I mean, right there. I mean, these are all new guys, and they're all explosive offensive weapons. But the problem is, even though he brought in a lot of transfers on defense as well, most of the star players that he brought in were offensive guys. I still don't think USC has the players on defense to compete with the big boys yet.
And that's a 400-yard defense you're talking about here. You cannot win conference championship games with 400-yard defenses. I'm going to repeat that over and over again. It just doesn't work. You can't outscore opponents and let them go toe-to-toe with you defensively. It doesn't work. And, Oklahoma was never known for their defense. They were good.
They got better. Yeah, Alex Grinch did a good job there for a couple of years, and he does follow Riley over to USC.
Yeah, exactly. He brings a lot of his coaching staff with him here that way this year as well. So there's people that have them as the team to beat in the conference this year, probably likely so. But the truth of the matter is, all these pieces of the puzzle are going to have to mesh for that to happen for Southern Cal this year.
Now, Fresno State, that's going to be a tricky one on September 17th at home as a non-conference. They also host Notre Dame at the end of the season non-conference. And in the conference, they got to go to Utah, UCLA, and Oregon State. So
it's not an easy schedule.
All right, next up, speaking of UCLA, Chip Kelly. They had themselves a really nice year last year, finally, under Chip Kelly. He does bring DTR back at quarterback, so that's good. And he brings Charbonneau back at running back. That's good. Unfortunately, he loses a couple of big pieces. He loses his number 1 receiver, Kyle Phillips. He uses his big-time tight end, Greg Dulcich. So that's going to hurt a little bit. Defense, they brought in several really key transfers. That, I think, is going to be the big difference. But, it's good to see UCLA winning again. We'll find out whether or not they can make it 2 years in a row.
I wonder why Dylan Gabriel decommitted. Maybe it was because he felt he wasn't going to get past Dorian Thompson-Robinson at the quarterback slot. I don't know. But the truth of the matter is they got a running back that is going to be in the National Football League. Zach Charbonnet, I believe it's pronounced.
Charbonneau. Yep.
Yeah, ran for 1,100 yards last football season, 13 touchdowns. They finally snapped that 5-year losing streak last year. So, do they fit that bill, that formula where loser, 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 winner? Do they go back to where they came from, or do they keep moving forward here that way this year? There's a lot on the line here right now for Chip Kelly. I think if he doesn't get the job done, he'll be in a really, really hot seat. He was on one last year and he responded. We'll see what this football team does this year.
Schedule was good because they don't have anybody non-conference to worry about. They're all cupcakes. So because of that, they should be bowl eligible again this year.
Well, you mentioned cupcakes. Look at that stat you will like in the Playbook Preview Guide magazine. Chip Kelly in his career against losing teams, 23-1 straight up and 17-5 to the spread. So that'll probably help him along the way.
And then the rest of the teams are going to fight for the bottom, and they're going to be battling for a bowl at best. That's Arizona State, Arizona, Colorado. And when you take a look at those teams, the reason Arizona State's taken a step back because of the violations, so everybody transferred out. So it's look, Herm Edwards kept his job, but you got coaching changes, coordinators, players that are gone. He was lucky enough to bring in Emory Jones, the quarterback from Florida, and the running back from Wyoming, Valladay. So that's good. But I just think there's so much turmoil that it's going to be hard for them to go to a bowl. I'm a big fan of what's going on in Arizona with Jedd Fisch. This is a team that I'm going to be wagering on this year to pull off a couple of upsets. So I'm going to be taking one of those 15-point dog games, 20-point dog games, and I think they're going to pull off an upset or two. And Carl Durrell, I think he's going to get Colorado back to playing better football than last year because last year's offense was just atrocious.
Well, you mentioned Arizona State, and it is a lot of revolving doors going on at that program right now, and to the point where Edwards even hired Brian Billick to come in as an offensive analyst and become an advisor to himself, the head coach here. So, can they patch this up? That remains to be seen. They lose their Jaden Daniels. That's really, really a big, big loss for this football program here. Arizona is a football team like you. I will be on this year as well. Last year, they were the worst team in college football in net turnover margin. And you know what? We talk about that. What goes down comes up, and what goes vice versa as far as that is concerned. That will really help this football program this year. They got Jaden Delora, a 4-star quarterback, a 2-year starter with Washington State. He comes in here. He knows the Pac-12, which is really, really helpful. You get transfers. They usually come from other conferences or other areas in the country. He comes from the Pac-12 conference, which is really, really going to be beneficial for this team here. I think he's a huge pickup for this program here, and I think this football team gets over their season win total here this year. They were priced a little bit low this year, but I think this football program is going to be in the bowl game by season's end.
And they also land the star receiver from UTEP, Jacob Cowing. So that was a big transfer pickup as well.
Yes.
In Arizona. Moving on over to the opposite division and Oregon. You got Lanning. We talked about it with the Georgia matchup. So Lanning is at Oregon. He's going to recruit just like Cristobal. So and he probably even does a better job because he's one of the best in the entire country. He brings in Bo Nix, the Auburn quarterback. I don't know. I mean, Bo Nix is okay, but I don't know. He can be either. He could be really good and he could be really inconsistent. So I don't know what to expect from Bo Nix. Noah Sewell is an elite defender. They've got some really good players, but I don't know if they have enough in year one. He might need at least a year, but we're all excited to see how they measure up week 1 against Georgia.
Well, you mentioned Bo Nix. You don't know what you're going to get from him. He's that Forrest Gump quarterback, if you will. He could be very, very good, or he can, be very, very erratic. There's a reason he's no longer at Auburn. But the fact of the matter is he threw for over 7,000 yards at Auburn. And they say he was outstanding in spring this year as well. So that's good news for Oregon here. Dan Lanning, I think, was a good hire for this team here. You mentioned the former defensive coordinator at Georgia here, also an assistant in Alabama. So he's got a lot of pedigree inside of him. I don't know if this football program improves from where they were last year, but I think they got a good chance of being a solid team this year.
Not yet ready for a playoff, though, correct?
Not ready for the playoff. There's no. It's a question of whether or not they're going to be even ready to challenge for the Pac-12 is what it is. So they're not ready for a playoff.
All
No,
right,
no.
staying in the state, Oregon State. Jonathan Smith, we talked about it last year. Big fan, loved to turn around, expected to turn around over the last couple of years. They finally got it, went to a bowl, and now they're going to be better this year. So this is really a little sneaky team to keep an eye on in this division. That matchup against Oregon, they're at home this year at the end of the season against Oregon. That could be for the division. That's how good Oregon State's going to be. Chance Nolan's back at quarterback. They got some pretty good players coming back on defense. Most of their top players are back, matter of fact, on defense. So I think sky's the limit. I think Oregon State is going to be there at the very end and might surprise people and actually play in the Pac-12 championship game.
Well, they check a lot of boxes this year, Greg, and for the right reasons. They did a lot of good things last year. It was their first winning season since 2013, which means will they revert or will they continue their moving forward here? They averaged 6.4 yards per play on offense last year. That's really good news. I think the better news here, though, however, is this football program here. They've got a quarterback in Chance Nolan who's really good, but they got a stud freshman running back named Damian Martinez, and they say that this kid is special. Just to say to quote them, he's a very smooth runner, effortless with the football in his hands. He makes guys miss on every play, and he's all over the film. If this kid develops as well as he can, along with Chance Nolan, this football team can continue upward. If they don't, they're going to probably regress.
One thing I'm worried about is the schedule. Their first two games are against two of the best teams in the Mountain West Conference. They host Boise State, then they go to Fresno State in week 2, and then 2 weeks later, USC, and then at Utah.
Yeah, it's a little bit tough, I'd say, to say the least. But again, you're gonna do that in the Pac-12 because most teams are formidable, not necessarily overpowering, but any those are the types of games that any team can win, and you wouldn't be surprised. I think it's manageable for this football team, and I'm like you, I'm a big fan of head coach Jonathan Smith. I think he's doing a great job with this program. He's brought them back to relevance, especially having taken them to a bowl game last year.
Now I think it's time to get serious about Washington because they made a good hire in Kalen DeBoer. So whether or not it could happen overnight, I don't know if they have enough talent. They bring in Michael Penix, the quarterback from Indiana, who actually had his best year at Indiana when DeBoer was their offensive coordinator. So there's a lot.
That's a great point.
Yeah, there's a lot of chemistry they like there. But Penix has to stay healthy, and so we don't know if he can or not. And they're always a good defensive team. They got 2 studs up front that everybody's excited about in the NFL. But I don't know. Again, it's a new coach. I don't know about the quarterback position. I don't know if he can stay healthy. There's talent there. They're a mystery team still, but they're definitely a potential contender for the title.
Yeah, that matchup is really nice. DeBoer and Penix being back together again. That's really nice to see. This program needed a big shot in the arm because when Jimmy Lake was fired here, this program was going nowhere. They were really bottoming out. They were one of the best football programs inside the Pac-12 conference, and they were becoming one of the worst conferences. They dipped to as low as 4-8 after being a number 20 ranked team in 2020. So I think it all works in their favor for them this football season here. And if this combination between Penix and DeBoer works real well, this football team could go bowling this year.
Stanford, David Shaw. I think this is it.
Oh.
I think if Stanford does not go to a bowl this year, I think David Shaw, look, if Stanford doesn't want to fire him, I think he should resign. They're just not getting anything going on here. I don't care about 4-2 pandemic year. That's nothing. They've won 4 and in 3 games, 7 games the last 2 full seasons. That's just not getting it done. I don't know what's going on there. They've lost momentum recruiting. And this is a year where they've got a quarterback in Tanner McKee. The kid's got a lot of talent. They've got a couple of good weapons on offense. They should be productive on offense. They really should if that offensive line can go back to being the traditional really good Stanford offensive line. And they have a couple of good linemen. So I expect this team, if they're going to ever have a chance to get some of that magic back with David Shaw, this is the year offensively. I just don't know if they have enough horses on defense.
You sound like the athletic director who brought David Shaw into his office and laid it out for him and told him exactly what's going to happen. And you hit it right on the head. He's going to have to deliver here. This is a team that won 40 games in 4 years from 2015 to 2018. And you go back the last 3 years, they've only won 10 games combined. They've fallen off the map. It's unbelievable what's happened to this program. It probably has to do with recruiting. That'd be my first best guess. He does have a good quarterback coming back here, and but their defense here ranked last in the Pac-12 in scoring defense. They allowed over 32 points a game, 6.5 yards per play. The clock is ticking right now on David Shaw, and it's make or break for him this football season here. I don't think he's going to do it. And I think he'll, like you say, if he doesn't get fired, if you have a losing season here, I think he'll resign.
Okay, and then wrapping it up, you got California and Washington State. Justin Wilcox has done a nice job at Cal, but they had a disappointing 5-win season last year, and they've only won 6 games combined the last 2 years. Actually, the record's 6-10 the last 2 years. Plummer comes in at quarterback from Purdue. They're always going to play good defense with Justin Wilcox, but the offense it's just so bland. And until he finds an offense, they're just not going to be successful at Cal.
No, it's, you go back to the Sonny Dykes years when they lit up the,
Crazy,
the scoreboard,
yeah.
That was exciting, but it hasn't happened here. When they hired Justin Wilcox, they knew what they got. He's a defensive genius. When he was over at Utah, outstanding job that he did right there. And it's the reason he got this head coaching position here right now. But they're going to have to, as you say, light this offense up some way, somehow. And I don't know if that's going to happen for this team this year. Jack Plummer, as you mentioned, comes in here. They're going to have to put all of everything on his shoulders here because he threw the ball for almost 400 yards a game when his years at Purdue. But bottom line here is I think this football team is a losing team again this year, and I think it could be pressure on the head coach coming up this year. Washington State, they're bringing Cameron Ward in here. He comes in from the Incarnate Ward and from the transfer portal here.
That could be exciting.
Yes, it could be. Yes, it could be. He put up some ridiculous numbers of 77 touchdowns and 14 interceptions in 2 years. Those are really, really outstanding numbers. And they've got a head coach that's an air raid offense type head coach. So they're going to allow him to open that playbook up and be just that. Watch out for Washington State putting up some big points in some football games. If for nothing else, they'll probably be a really good over football team this year.
Yeah, similar to what happened at Western Kentucky. You've got the offensive coordinator was the guy who was the coach for the quarterback at the FCS level. So they bring the coordinator with the quarterback, and that could really work out well for Washington State. So maybe Washington State could be a sleeper in the Pac-12 in this division.
They could well be because there's going to be football teams that are going to underachieve, and if this football team surprises and plays to that offensive level, they could be just that team, that surprise team to watch in the Pac-12.